in our case, it's things like olives and figs. Like you can literally just poke a fig anywhere, and it loves this climate so much, and is so built for this climate. You can just rely on having baskets of figs in 3-4 years.
Welcome back to another episode of Grow Your Grass Off. We have an amazing guest, Sam, all the way from Perth, Australia. And we are just so excited to have you on. We've seen some of your episodes that you're offering, and I think it's fantastic, the angle that you guys are presenting and the content that people can really grab a hold of. Perth, like you said, is really an amazing place. So we're so glad to have you here. Sam, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invite. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Lovely to meet you guys.
Yes, pleasure to meet you too. We'll just hop right in and just tell us about your podcast, the name of it, what it's called, your inspiration, why you started this podcast and what you're doing there.
Yeah, I'll just say to begin with, it's an honor to be the first international Zoom call. So this is huge for me and the pod. It's validation of quite a bit of effort. I know what it takes to run a podcast. So it's awesome opportunity for me. The pod, it's like I've always just nature has been my thing. So even since I was a kid, I just couldn't. Here in Perth, we have these beautiful bushlands sort of at the outskirts of the city. And I would sort of, it would be my reprieve or my solace, even as a kid. I just loved getting outside of the city and going for hikes around the acacia woodland and the eucalyptus forests and things. And so I've always just had this crazy ingrained love of nature. And when I was straight out of high school, I went off and studied horticulture. And it was kind of the equivalent of like a community college, like what you guys have. But it was just an amazing introduction to just all facets of horticulture and tending for plants and creating gardens and all these things. And worked in the retail sort of arm of horticulture, like helping people, Perth families, grow fruits and veggies, tend for their own gardens for years and years, maybe 8 or so years. And then started my own business, Edulous Gardening, which means edible in Latin. Started that in about 2012. So since then, I've just been helping Perth families grow their own food, happy and healthy via their back garden. And the podcast sort of came along about a year and a half ago. I've just been such a long-term podcast fan, and I've always wanted to start one. I regret not starting one 6 years ago because you guys in the US are so far ahead of everyone in Perth. And Herb Your Enthusiasm, I've just always had this infectious enthusiasm for all things to do with nature, biology, growing food. So it was just a play on words with Curb Your Enthusiasm, obviously. But the whole premise is just all about urban farming, permaculture, getting people enthused about nature via growing food. So we're getting more and more involved in the community now. We're getting stuck into events. We've got the Kalamunda Garden Festival coming up, which is a huge aggregation of all the keen people in gardening. So we're going to be heavily involved with that. So it's going from strength to strength. It's a very long answer.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. I love the name. I love that show. I've seen a lot of it, but I think I relate it to ours. I mean, a little bit of sense of humor to the name, and I love it. I was going to ask you. Primarily, you're focusing on urban environments. What kind of strategies do you employ, or do you see work well there in Perth for people that don't have acreage like myself and Brandon?
Yeah, you've got to be as far as growing food, that kind of thing, is setting up edible gardens.
Yes.
You have to be a little bit more clever. Obviously, it depends on how big your space is, but I'm always trying to introduce themes like water harvesting into introduce those themes to people. Like Perth is really a horribly bad city when it comes to living within its means as far as resources. I'm always sort of advising people to get into water harvesting and just sensible planning out of your productive gardens. So if people that I work with, if they really have the enthusiasm for wanting to grow their own food and do it ethically and biologically and all these things, you just have to be clever about how you use space. I'm not advocating for any chemical use, of course, like it's all strictly biological and natural. Yeah, just from the absolute start, it pays to put a ton of attention into your broader design rather than just winging it and just chucking whatever where. So to have a really well laid out plan with how you're going to lay out a garden, use your productive space, it's really right. It's really important to have 100 hours of conscious attention rather than tons and tons of wasted labor. So put all the attention in at the start as opposed to winging it as you go and come up with a sensible design. I also tell people a lot about, I don't know if you've heard of him, Brad Lancaster, but he's from Arizona.
For sure. Fantastic guy.
Yeah. Like we're huge fans of him in Perth because it's kind of applicable to our climate. So yeah, that's kind of the next arm going forward for me. What I'm doing and business stuff is getting like really pushing the envelope as far as water conservation when it comes to garden design, because we could be doing it so much better. You've no idea. It's we could be doing things like porous driveways, like that have sort of water storage underneath the driveway. We could be doing things like massive overhauls of irrigation systems to save thousands of gigaliters of water a year in Perth. So yeah, I'm trying to sort of drill it into people how important it is to be conservative with water, and yeah, and also that it's complementary to that is just swinging all of your growing over to food production. So the whole ethos is taking your back garden from consumption to production. So that's the kind of the angle that I'm always working on. And rather than planting, I don't think we have enough time to like play around with growing grasses and things and non-productive plants. It's time to get conscious about switching our resource use over to productive species of plants. So yeah, all of this stuff factors in.
And that's a great segue, because the next question I had for you was kind of along those same lines, where we transform the lawn into food, like you just said, as far as edible landscape. So if we look at the name of GYGO, Grow Your Grass Off, it has that same meaning, as far as we want to get after it, and that's part of the punch of what we want to try and do. And like you said, it's that we don't want to mess around with inputs and all these things that take away from really what we're trying to get after. So for me, I'll just say Grow Your Grass Off has the meaning of grass is fine, especially grass that's sort of volunteer, that is the path. It can be an accessory or a supplement maybe to what is there in your garden. And if you've got kids, it is nice to have them roll around and have something friendly, to play on. But to me, it's just an accessory, and that's what it means to me to grow my grass off. Everything else is edible. Everything else is nature. Everything else is blended so that there's production. So I'm wondering, what kind of setup do you have currently, and what would be your ultimate vision, even for your own place?
We've only just bought a house in the last year and a half, me and my fiance. Like I spend so much time on other people's gardens. It's like the classic story where you kind of haven't sorted your own yet or come up with a mainframe design. I'm sure you guys are all the same. I just have sort of a mixture of low water requiring native plants in at the moment, and bird attracting plants. So the things that I have planted are top 10 bird attracting plants for my area, bringing in endemic birds. So I've got I don't know if you guys have heard the name grevillea, but you might want to plant a few of those. I'm sure the dry climates that you guys are in, grevilleas will grow really well. But yeah, it's kind of a conventional, semi-conventional looking garden. It's lovely and tidy because I do edible landscaping, all facets of landscaping. So I just have a mixture of screening plants and low sprawling ground covers that are bird attracting. And what else have I got out there? Yeah, it's all established, but in time I'm going to switch it all over to hyper productive and put sensible watering systems in. Yeah, and I have all sorts of harebrained ideas I want to do with our place, and also get some really great tech in where I have sort of control over the watering system, and I can track every drop that goes on the garden. I think that's incredibly important for people in landscaping and edible gardens, these kinds of things, to track every single drop of water that goes on, because people will just be haphazard, lackadaisical with water use, and we can't be like that in dry climates. So yeah, to answer your question, it's kind of a mixture of pretty exotic plants and then just dry land bird attracting plants.
And I guess a follow-up question could be, sometimes people have what do they call it, kitchen garden, right? The kitchen garden
Yeah.
is something that's a blend between organization and free flow. So, for us, we do, a lot of times with clients, we'll have, a food forest section, which is totally, tilted toward maybe fungal dominated soil. You've got a mulch, you've got perennials, and then you've got your annuals. Do you like to mix it up at all in your designs and what you do in terms of having some annuals in mixed in there, or how do you feel about that?
Oh yeah, like it always depends on just the client brief. Like if they just have a particular affinity for some kind of flowering annual, you can just chuck those in. There's nothing mutually exclusive, but yeah, to be honest with you, like when I started my little biz, I thought I'd have just people knocking down the door, like as far as inquiry, trying to set things up. But the reality is like you have a handful of people like that subscribe to your way of looking at things, but the majority in my field anyway just they didn't have the understanding or the education, and they kind of just wanted their place to look lovely and maintained and all this stuff. So, and people are less willing to fork out like potentially tens of thousands for a full-fledged design when they haven't had the prior education. So when I do meet one, I'm like, yes, because I can implement all my ideas and things. Yeah, it's always client dependent. Like that's what I'm hoping to do with this pod is kind of educate people and remove that education barrier. So then they're full steam ahead with the productive and edible gardens. Yeah, so as far as like zoning stuff with like the different requirements and all that. Yeah, like I would maybe I haven't I've only literally in the last 5 years maybe had 20 clients that are full steam ahead with like a proper permaculture agroforestry design. They're harder to find than you would think. So I think it's maybe about building your community, aggregating the people that subscribe to all your ideas, and then you can just go for it. They're on your page. So I didn't anticipate all that when I started, like because I thought people would just go, oh, they'll see the sense in all the edible stuff. There'll just be a waterfall of inquiry, But there's that people get the very basics of like a kitchen garden and things, but they don't see the sense of the agroforestry setups and the nitrogen fixing overstory and all that stuff. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's great.
With us too, you expect this overwhelming amount of people that want to grow their own food and slamming on our doors, but it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, too, same here in the States. And I think it's about educating people and, having that network of people to just bounce off of and help educate yourself and others. So you mentioned that herbs grow there like weeds. Which ones particularly grow there, such as? What'd you say?
There's a handful of like noxious weeds that grow around Perth. Like the plant side is my huge strong suit. I'm crazy about all the taxonomy and the plant like nomenclature and all that. Our dryland weeds. There's lots of like. Whereabouts are you guys all in dry areas? So Seattle and Houston? Is that right?
No,
I'm pretty much, yeah.
I'm in Orlando. Yeah, I'm in a subtropical rainforest basically, and Brandon's way.
Oh, nice. That's much different.
Yeah.
I'm in Costa Rica, so I'm the opposite, really.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I can't really. It's not really the same, but yeah, in Perth, it's the same climate as like South California, I think. Yeah, we have the really bad. There's a few weeds actually because our part of the world was actually joined onto South Africa back in the Gondwana land era, and so we share a lot of the same genetic diversity as the South African plant species. So a lot of South African plants have naturalized and become pretty significant weeds here, and vice versa. So we have a lot of I don't know if you've heard the name Velt daisy or Osteospermum. There's different kinds of acacias and things that are like that pioneer colonizer type plants. So when you look at it through the permaculture lens, they're hard eager workers with all those virtues of the plant, the weedy species. But I'm trying to think of the word. There's things like Japanese pepper is a really bad one. That's like a dry land plant. Yeah, there's a handful of maybe 30 of the same familiar suspects that you see taking over vacant land and all these things.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Have you experienced with growing any kind of Chinese herbs or anything like that? I've recently kind of dabbled into that this year, just for fun.
Oh yeah. I like the medicinal stuff.
Yeah, marshmallow, cosmere, burnet, cowslip, any of those. Just I've recently just grabbed I have a whole raised bed full of just herbs, and so it's just packed full of any kind of cool herbs I could find. And now I've just cut them and dried them, and my son has sort of helped the process along, and it's been fun. I haven't used any yet, but lots of good medical reasons, to have them in your cupboard.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they haven't been on the planet for 4,000 years for no reason.
Exactly.
Been in cultivation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh no, I don't think I've grown too many. I grew like not the classic medicinal Chinese herbs. You say herb, we say herb.
Yeah.
I know, I like that. That's how I want to say it is herb, but
Yeah,
we
it's
don't
funny.
say it like that here.
When I did my permaculture course, I was with a load of Canadians and Americans, and I'd always snicker when you'd say herb. I probably said it wrong. Anyway, like Asian in medicinals. I haven't grown any of like the really well-known ones, but I've been right into just medicinal mushrooms and things in prior years, reishi and cordyceps and things. But yeah, it's you can't deny plants that have been in human cultivation for like 5,000-6,000 years. There's some unbelievable thing going on there where they've almost co-evolved with our biology. That's my theory.
Mhm. Totally.
I was curious if you have any recommendations for, culinary herbs that we use in the kitchen a lot, and which ones do you find easy to propagate,
Yeah, there's so we're pretty unlimited. We have a long growing window here in Perth, like 10 months of the year. Our classics are all the Mediterranean ones. So we have basil and thyme and oregano, marjoram, sage. Yeah, there's the dry loving plants that tend to be quite high in the oils, like the oils that give the lovely scents. So I think that's because their waste products in the plants are like concentrated for some reason. You get those aromatic oils. But things like let's see, oregano, the main ones that you'd want on like a pizza. Everyone grows them around Perth. And the sage grows like a weed. Thyme is just built for this climate. Yeah, thyme and oregano. I'm trying to think of the other ones. Coriander is big. Like in Perth, there's a lot of plants actually that do really well over our winter. So we get down to like 1 degree in the winter. Maybe that's almost the lowest. And with things like coriander and dill and fennel, love Perth in the autumn months. So no, it's the usual stuff. Probably the same ones you guys are growing.
Cool.
You missed my favorite, rosemary.
Oh yeah, no, there's masses of hedges around Perth.
I'm sure.
It literally like rosemary is as at home here as like Greece or Italy. It loves Perth's climate. We have tons of rosemary all up and down the coast.
Yeah, I got to grow mine in hugel mounds, or I got to bring them up because it's so wet here. I literally live on a sponge basically in Florida, so it's funny what
Okay.
Yeah, but I love it.
Are you guys growing like jackfruits and breadfruits and all those awesome wet tropical ones?
Not me. I'm a little too cold. I'm in zone 9B, but I am going to try to grow it. I have about a 1/4 acre of woods, so I'm going to throw it back in there and see what happens.
Yeah, cool. You'd be amazed actually if you actually try stuff, because if someone told me that jackfruit could grow here in Perth, I would never have believed them. But 2 years ago, I came across a huge thriving jackfruit tree, and it had massive, big fruits on it. So, and we're classic dry land Mediterranean. So until you give it a shot, you don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if someone grew a coconut here. That would shock me.
Yeah, I just put 2 coconuts last week, so I'm all about
Oh,
experimenting.
good stuff. The dwarf one?
Yeah, it's a Malawi or Malaysian variety. They only get like 6 feet.
Yeah, Malay.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm doing these interviews now, these Instagram lives, and I did one with a Brisbane gardener. So Brisbane is the same climate as you, and yeah, she had just done the same thing, planted the dwarf Malay, and they only get to like 3.5 meters, and you can just reach up and pick them.
It's awesome.
Mhm.
I love it.
I would
Yeah.
love that.
I'll send you some.
Who doesn't love coconut water?
Right.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Any other burning questions, guys?
I always ask everyone, what's your favorite fruit or what do you want to grow? Because we can go down that train for an hour and talk about weird, rare fruit, but you know, see what you like. And
Favorite fruit, I like the ones that are just super easy that you can just poke in and you know you're going to get a harvest with zero effort. So ones like that here in Perth, olives are just pretty much like the state plant. The olives just grow amazingly here. So, and you need we have quite a big Italian population in Perth. They all came over in like the 60s and 70s. And yeah, as soon as there's lots of olives sort of growing up and down the avenues here in Perth along the streets. And whenever they're fruiting and they rain off onto the highways, and there's often like teams of these Italian families with tarps with like blankets underneath the olives, and their cousins are shaking the trees and harvesting all the olives. So
That's what I was wondering.
yeah, they grow.
That's so cool. You could just go and pick them and they just grow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, if you can identify the plants that literally they're built for the climate. It's like plants are like people. It's like they thrive in certain different little niches. And when you find the plant that is built for that particular niche, just have that as the base of your productive garden. So yeah, in our case, it's things like olives and figs. Like you can literally just poke a fig anywhere, and it loves this climate so much, and is so built for this climate. You can just rely on having baskets of figs in 3-4 years. So figs, I think, are great, and yeah. Also trees that are like they don't have as many issues with pest and disease insects. So figs figs might be my favorite fruit tree because they grow with zero effort and they're actually pollinated by a pest, Mediterranean fruit fly. So the Mediterranean fruit fly will sting the fruit of your soft flesh fruits, and it spoils the fruit. But in the case of the fig tree, when the fig's ripe, there's like a little mini hole on the underside of the fig, and that's how they're pollinated, is with this little Mediterranean fruit fly. So you don't have the same issues worrying about the fruit rotting. So yeah, maybe I would say figs are probably my favorite fruit tree because then zero effort, maximum yield, and you don't really have pest and disease other than like the hard-shelled scale insects you guys might have seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm jealous.
Yeah.
Figs and olives do terrible where I'm at. And I love them.
Yeah.
We had 2 fig trees.
Bananas would grow like weeds though, hey?
Yeah.
Right. True.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
What about you guys? What's your favorite fruit trees?
Ooh, everyone knows mine. Mine's jabuticaba, or Brazilian grape tree.
Oh, love those.
I have a lot of plinias. I have a lot of Eugenia variety, a lot of subtropical things from Brazil in my yard. That's what I collect.
Mhm.
So those are my favorite.
Have you heard of that? Have you heard of sapodilla or the Chico?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the best tropical fruit I've ever had. It tastes like sticky date
Butterscotch.
pudding.
Yeah, butterscotch almost, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also
good.
Rollinia. You should try growing Rollinia.
Yeah, I haven't had that, but it looks cool.
Yeah. Hawaiian custard apple.
Mm-hmm.
Yum.
I think we've got that here. It is amazing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
Rollinia deliciosa.
That's an Annona, right?
It's related, yeah.
Yeah.
Any plant with the species name deliciosa is usually a good bet with an edible fruit.
Yeah. That's my next obsession. Rolenias and Annonas. I'll probably start collecting those.
Yeah, for sure. There's probably, like, if you want to do some digging, there's probably local people that have grown them for a few generations. So you might be able to find some real strong genetic lines and keep them viable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with the home gardeners, it's all about keeping amazing heirloom genetic lines like viable by growing them. So yeah, it's really, we're doing people don't understand the importance of little home gardeners like this and people with the community gardens. because it's up to us literally to keep these heirloom varieties in cultivation. Because if we just leave food production up to industrialized conventional means, all of those die out. All of those amazing, kind of more fickle but more colorful and amazing varieties of all of your edible crops, they kind of just fall by the wayside. It's like I was actually watching this doco the other day, and they were talking about GM corn and how I think 98% of the corn in the US is GM now. And I saw this amazing film where people were sourcing old Christmas wreaths from like the 60s, and they were picking the little corn kernels off the Christmas wreaths because that's the only way they knew it was non-GM.
Wow.
So can you
Amazing.
believe that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to get into
Yeah.
that a bit more, Sam, if you can. Because I'd love to hear your take. I think you've got a fantastic view of things in terms of the history, because you're bringing up a lot of cool data. But like,
Mhm.
if we're talking, all right, I'm a suburban homeowner or renter, and I say, okay, what are the real benefits of doing this? I might have a nice garden I can go out to and engage with, have nature connection, but what are some of your big points, that you like to talk about when it comes to this? What's the
Benefits
benefit?
of like edible garden.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like I have this saying that you can solve all the world's problems in a garden. So it's like you can solve all of your food supply line needs. It's like you can be your medicine chest if you let it. It solves, you're fostering community by talking to your neighbors and swapping seeds and plants and cuttings and things. So there's the social aspect. It can be your therapist chair. Like, it's way cheaper than therapy, getting out there in the garden, getting your hands dirty. It's like Ron Finley, how he says gardening is cheaper than therapy, plus you get tomatoes. So it's there's a lot of social benefits. There's a lot of health benefits. I think it seems like we've got this epidemic now of the horrible mental health. I think cross-culturally throughout the Western world was probably related to the pandemic and stuff. And I really see things like community gardening as being a viable option to solve a lot of the mental health stuff. It brings people together, and it fosters the community. There's no substitute for homegrown food. It's not like watered down, industrially produced strawberries, tomatoes, whatever. You actually taste the food for the first time, because it's got all those lovely enzymes and life-giving sugars and things, and there's no comparison from homegrown food to conventionally grown food. So the benefits of taking charge of your own food production are literally endless. And there's the environmental point as well with peak everything, like peak oil, peak water, peak everything. It's like, it's a really viable solution that you can generate change yourself. You can take change into your own hands, and it's doing something as simple as grow a tomato, grow 6 tomatoes, grow a bit of a diversity of nightshade plants, grow corn and things, have an aquaculture system. It's also the peace of mind of knowing that you're kind of semi in charge of your own food just outside your back door. I think it's just win-win all the way around. So I would love to be the guy that kind of has some role in educating people like this, where you can swing your resource use over to the edible side of things. You don't have to be just planting boring screen plants that have a nice flower. Like, you can have a little banana grove or a little home orchard or a worm farm composting situation, and you're more engaged. You're more like, what am I trying to say here? Like, it gives you a more of a sense of control. Like, you don't feel so helpless and lackadaisical about things. It's like, oh, I know that I grew that and I've nurtured that seed from beginning to end, and now I have this lovely harvest. And to me, it's absolutely completely second nature for the last 15 years that people should be learning about growing their own food. And how many YouTube videos have you seen of people that took charge of their own food production, 3 decades ago, and they're looking way less, way younger than all of their friends, because they're growing all this lovely nutrient dense food. And I saw this lady, I can't remember, I'll have to send you guys the link, but she might have been in like Atlanta or something, but she started growing her food 40 years ago, and when she's out in public with her husband, everyone asks like, "Oh, it's so nice of you to be out with your dad." So she looks like way younger than her husband. Yeah, random tangent, but I'll send you guys the link.
Yeah,
Anyway,
please.
the edible side of things is just you can't lose. So I'm always singing the praises of edible food production.
Yep.
Especially with kids too. We all have kids, and so it's important to us to teach them where it comes from, what it is, and how easy it is to grow food if you just try. So
I kind of stumbled. There was no like knowledge of permaculture in my circles, and none of my friends or peers or parents growing up, no one ever spoke the word permaculture to me. Like I had to come across that when I was studying horticulture in 2013. I by chance came across Permaculture 1 by Bill Mollison, and that just like it was just like a red carpet rolling out. I was like, oh my God, this is what it could be. This integrates all of my big passions, you know?
Yeah.
And a system for sensible resource use and living sustainably, living within your means. It was just like, oh, this is what I've been waiting for. It aggregates all of my big interests. And then, we're absolutely, I was supposed to be studying horticulture, but I couldn't put Permaculture 1 down. I was like, this is the book the book of all books for me. And then after that, I got the Permaculture Designer's Manual and read that whole thing. That's just such a important text. There's just thousands of years of condensed knowledge in that book. It's so information dense, and the strategies for growing in every climate, and unbelievable. And the thousands of hours he spent liaising with indigenous peoples to get their techniques for growing. And it's a wondrous book, that Designer's Manual. And then there's so many complementary books as well. Like I don't know if have you guys heard of Rosemary Marrow? She's another like real luminary in the permaculture space.
It was, I think, Dave. We had an interview with Dave Spicer, and he was mentioning her as well, I think.
No, I think we punch above our weight here in WA with the real permaculture luminaries. There's I forget his name now, Chris Ferreira. You guys might want to get on to Chris Ferreira. He's a real mover and shaker within permaculture in WA. So he's doing all sorts of incredible things up north of me, where he's doing little eco villages and things, and all geared towards permaculture design. Just trying to think what I was going to say. Yeah. Doc Spicer was he was an amazingly talented guy. I call him like the geosurgeon, because he was the master of reconstructive earthworks or regenerative earthworks. So on the farm, he probably dug out himself tens of kilometers of swales on contour. You guys have probably seen all that. And then that feeds into the dams and then the little level sill spillways and things. So yeah, it's unbelievably important work that these techniques can be used to drought-proof properties. And you can use it in that many different ways, but God, it's so applicable in areas where you have clay to be able to store it all on site and replenish all the underground aquifers and all those things. So hopefully I'm on episode number 10,000 with you guys.
Yeah, I was going to say, just highlight again where people can find you on your podcast, website, all that stuff, your business, so we can get that dropped in there and put it in the description too to get people your way.
Yeah, Apple. So Herb Your Enthusiasm. Herb Your Enthusiasm on all podcast players, so Spotify, Apple Pods, Google Pods, all the rest of it, but mainly Apple Podcasts is our big one. You can find us on Instagram, Herb Your Enthusiasm Pod, all one word. And we're also on TikTok, Herb Your Enthusiasm Pod. But yeah, it's still early days for us, but we're getting major groundswell now. So the message can't be any better. We'd love to have a bit of a US, a few fans over there. It's crazy. 11% of our listeners are from the States. It's how huge podcasting is there. So we're 3 years behind you. So yeah, that's the base of the socials anyway.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's coming. And we'll send some more listeners your way.
Amazing. Thank you very much for the opportunity.